Welcome to this bonus round about grammatical gender. Let's take a look at some extra info about where gender comes from, how it works in different European languages, and some curiosities about gender in Welsh. Most European languages and some Asian languages have evolved from a common ancestor called proto-indo-european that was probably spoken in this dark green area around 6,000 years ago. Nowadays, all the areas in light green speak Indo-European languages, descendants of that very old language. Proto-Indo-European already had grammatical gender, though probably a vastly different system that was related to whether nouns refer to living or non-living things. So gender has been preserved in European languages for at least 6,000 years, even though these languages have changed dramatically. But European languages don't all agree on how gender works. Some languages have two genders, masculine and feminine, shown in red in the map, which, as we saw, is the case of the Romance languages and also the Celtic languages, such as Welsh and Irish. The areas in dark blue speak languages that have three genders, masculine, feminine, and neuter. Neuter does not mean a genderless option, so in that case the name is misleading. It's simply a third gender that a word may have. These languages include German and Slavic languages such as Russian, Polish, and Czech. And this was also the case for Latin. The yellow areas speak Germanic languages in which the feminine and masculine genders have merged, so they only have two genders as well, but these are common and neuter. And then we have English in light blue, which has no grammatical gender today, even though it is a Germanic language and used to have three genders just like German. I'm not going to comment on the other light blue areas, that is Finnish, Estonian, Hungarian, and Turkish, because they are not Indo-European languages, so they are not related to any of the other European languages. There's also the always peculiar Basque language, here represented in green. It's not an Indo-European language either, but it does have two genders in some contexts, animate for living things and inanimate for non-living things. So I'm going to show you some sentences in the red languages with two genders and some sentences in the dark blue languages with three genders. So we already saw how to say the black sofa has arrived and the black chair has arrived in Portuguese and in French. Now let's add Welsh as well, another language with two genders. I'm going to change sofa into table in Welsh so that we have a masculine noun. So we would say Mae'r bwrdd di wedi cyrraedd and Mae'r gadair ddi wedi cyrraedd, making the necessary agreements. They are quite similar because these languages are related, even if very distantly in the case of Welsh. But here the word cadair, for example, is a direct borrowing from Latin cathedra, and that's why it's so similar to Portuguese. So these similarities are not a coincidence, as you will see when we look at Polish and German examples, which are quite different. Both these languages have three genders, so we will need to add an extra sentence and change some of the nouns around so that we have one noun of each gender. The German word Stuhl is masculine, so the black chair has arrived would be Der schwarze Stuhl ist angekommen. One possible word for sofa is the borrowing from English couch, which is feminine. So we say Die schwarze Couch ist angekommen. There's also the German word Sofa, which is of neuter gender. So we say Das schwarze Sofa ist angekommen. You can see that in these German sentences, the only impact that grammatical gender had was in the form of the word the. The words for black and arrived didn't vary. Polish, which is a Slavic language, works differently. The word for chair, krzesło, is neuter. So we say czarne krzesło przyszło. The word for sofa, kanapa, is related to the French one, but it's feminine in Polish. So we say czarna kanapa przyszła. Finally, the word for table is masculine, stół. So we say czarny stół przyszedł. We can see gender has had very different consequences this time. Firstly, there is no word the, so there's nothing to change there, but the adjective for black agrees with the noun. And in Polish, the verb arrived also has to agree in gender with the noun. So we can see that gender is a linguistic phenomenon that is not related to real-world gender. We can see that by the way that even words that refer to objects have a gender. Even more striking is that sometimes things that do have a gender in the real world, such as people or animals, do have to be referred to with a word that has its own gender. The Welsh words plentyn, person, baban, and gwestai are all masculine, regardless of the gender of the actual people that we're talking about. So even when referring to a girl, we would say mae hi'n blentyn da, not dda. The opposite thing happens with a cat, cath. So even if you have a tomcat, you would say mae e'n gath dda, not da. The way that gender is assigned to a word changes from language to language. Sometimes it appears to be arbitrary because there's nothing in the object or the word that can tell us about the gender. In some languages, there's a direct relationship between the shape of the word and the gender of that word. It might be the endings, for example, but sometimes this correspondence is very loose and there are many exceptions. A final curiosity about Welsh is that Welsh, unlike many languages with genders, doesn't have specific masculine and feminine forms of adjectives, but an earlier form of Welsh did have gendered adjectives. Before, Welsh had extra syllables that carried gender marking, but these syllables disappeared with natural language change. However, there are still some adjectives that have masculine and feminine forms, and some of them are quite commonly used. Many of them are colors. For example, white. So we have the masculine form gwyn and the feminine form gwen. This also happens with the colors green and yellow. So this book, for example, is called The Green Man and uses the word gwyrdd, but the Green Party is called plaidwerdd. Diolch am wylio y round bonus hon. Paid yn hofio tanysgrifio, a beth hoffet ti'n weld yn y sianel. Dweud eich dweud yn y sylwadau. Hwyl!